There's a cruel joke that life plays on every human being. It gives us the capacity for romantic love and then guarantees that it will break our hearts. Think about it. Every great love story you know, Romeo and Juliet, Cleopatra and Mark Antony, your own grandparents who had the perfect marriage, they all end the same way. In separation, in death, in disillusionment, or at best, in the quiet resignation of two people who've learned to tolerate each other's snoring. But here's the question nobody wants to ask. What if romantic love is designed to disappoint? What if the very nature of romantic love contains the seeds of its own destruction? Let me tell you about Maria and James. They met at a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning, and it was, as they later described it, love at first sight. The world seemed to shimmer around them. Colors were brighter, food tasted better, even mundane conversations felt profound. They were convinced they had found their soulmate, their missing piece, their one true love. 6 months later, James left dirty dishes in the sink, and Maria had a complete emotional breakdown. "This isn't the man I fell in love with," she sobbed to her friend. But here's the thing. James was exactly the same man. He had always left dirty dishes in sinks. Maria had simply been too intoxicated by romance to notice. What Maria discovered, what we all discover, is that we don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with projections. Romantic love begins with a fundamental act of imagination. You meet someone, and within moments, your mind starts writing a story, not about who they actually are, but about who they could be, who they might be, who you need them to be. You see a stranger across a crowded room, and suddenly they become the protagonist of your personal fairy tale. They're going to complete you, save you, understand you in ways nobody ever has. They're going to make your life meaningful, exciting, perfect. But this person, you've fallen in love with, this perfect, understanding, life-completing person, exists only in your imagination. The real person is standing right there, but you can't see them through the haze of your own projection. It's like falling in love with a movie character and then being disappointed when the actor turns out to be a normal human being with bad breath and political opinions you disagree with. Here's where it gets interesting. The other person is doing the exact same thing to you. They're not falling in love with you either. They're falling in love with their idea of you. You become their fantasy, their salvation, their missing piece. So you have two people, each in love with a fiction, each trying to live up to the other person's impossible expectations, each gradually discovering that reality is far messier than romance promised. No wonder it ends in disappointment. How could it not? But the cruelest part isn't the disappointment itself, it's that we blame the disappointment on choosing the wrong person. If only I could find my true soulmate, we think, then love would work. So we break up, we start over, we swipe right, we create dating profiles showcasing our highlight reels, we search for someone new to project our fantasies onto, and the cycle begins again. I once knew a woman named Catherine who had been married 4 times. "I keep marrying the wrong men," she told me. But when I listened to her stories, I realized she hadn't married 4 different men, she had married 4 different versions of the same fantasy. Each husband had disappointed her in exactly the same way, by being human instead of perfect. Catherine wasn't unlucky in love. She was addicted to the drug of romantic projection. You see, romantic love is essentially a beautiful form of madness. When you're in love, your brain is literally altered. Dopamine floods your system, logic shuts down, critical thinking disappears. You become, quite literally, intoxicated. This is why lovers do such ridiculous things. They write terrible poetry, they stay up all night talking about nothing, they see profound meaning in the way their beloved butters toast. They're not thinking clearly because they're not supposed to be thinking clearly. Romantic love is nature's trick to get you to bond with someone long enough to reproduce. It's a temporary insanity designed to override your better judgment. And like all forms of intoxication, it wears off. The real tragedy isn't that romantic love ends, it's what we do when it ends. Instead of recognizing that we were under the influence of a beautiful delusion, we assume something went wrong. We blame our partner for changing. They didn't change. We blame ourselves for making a bad choice. You probably made a fine choice. We blame love itself for being unreliable. Love is perfectly reliable at being unreliable. But what if the disappointment isn't a bug, it's a feature? Let me share a story about my friends David and Lisa. They fell madly in love, got married in a whirlwind romance, and were blissfully happy for about 18 months. Then Lisa got pregnant, money got tight, David started working longer hours, and Lisa began feeling neglected. "He's not the man I married," Lisa complained. "He used to bring me flowers every day. He used to write me love letters. He used to make me feel like the center of the universe." But David was exhausted. He was working 12-hour days to support their growing family. He loved Lisa deeply, but he couldn't maintain the intensity of early romance while also being a responsible provider and partner. Lisa faced a choice: mourn the loss of romantic intensity or discover what lay beneath it. This is the moment where most relationships either die or transform. The romantic love that brought you together was never meant to last forever. It was meant to be a bridge, a temporary state that gets you close enough to someone to discover whether there's anything real underneath the projection. For some couples, there isn't. When the romance fades, they discover they're essentially strangers who happen to share good chemistry. These relationships end, and perhaps they should. But for others, the end of romantic love is the beginning of something far more valuable: real love. Real love isn't about projection, it's about seeing. It's not about finding your missing piece, it's about becoming whole enough to appreciate another whole person. It's not about being completed by someone else, it's about being yourself so fully that you can love someone else for being themselves. Romantic love says, "I love you because you make me feel complete." Real love says, "I love you because you exist." Romantic love is conditional. "I love you as long as you continue to fulfill my fantasies." Real love is unconditional. "I love you even though you're nothing like my fantasies." Romantic love is about possession. "You are mine." Real love is about appreciation. "You are yourself." But here's why romantic love always disappoints. We expect it to do what it cannot do. We expect it to last forever, to solve all our problems, to make us perpetually happy. We treat it like it's the destination when it's actually just the vehicle. Imagine buying a ticket for a train, falling in love with the journey, and then being upset when the train reaches its destination. The train did exactly what it was supposed to do. It got you where you needed to go, but you were so enchanted by the ride that you forgot you were supposed to get off. Let me tell you what happened with David and Lisa. After months of fighting about how their love had changed, they finally had an honest conversation. "I miss how you used to look at me," Lisa said. "I miss how I used to see you," David replied. They realized they were both mourning the same loss, not the loss of love, but the loss of illusion. They were grieving the end of the fantasy and hadn't yet learned to appreciate the reality. So they decided to try something radical. They would get to know each other as they actually were, not as they had imagined each other to be. This process was initially terrifying. Without the rose-colored glasses of romance, they saw everything clearly. David's tendency to withdraw when stressed, Lisa's need for constant reassurance, his morning grumpiness, her passive-aggressive comments. All the flaws that romance had temporarily blinded them to were suddenly visible. But something unexpected happened. As they stopped trying to live up to each other's fantasies, they started to relax into their authentic selves. And as they became more real, they discovered they actually liked each other. Not the perfect versions they had invented, but the actual human beings they were. This is what nobody tells you about love. The disappointment of romance ending is actually the birth pang of real love beginning. But most people never make it through the transition. They interpret the end of romantic intensity as the end of love itself. They're like someone who plants a seed, waters it carefully, and then digs it up when the first green shoot appears because they think the seed has died. They don't realize that the seed had to die for the plant to be born. Here's another story. I knew a couple, married 43 years, who seemed to have the secret to lasting love. When people asked them how they stayed together so long, the husband always gave the same answer. "We fell in love with each other 7 different times." What he meant was that they had learned to let their relationship evolve. They didn't try to preserve the original romance like a pressed flower in a book. They allowed each other to grow, change, disappoint, and surprise them. They fell in love with who their partner was becoming, not who they had been. Each time their relationship ended, they chose to begin again, not with the same person they had married, but with the person that person had become. But why does this feel so difficult? Why do we cling so desperately to romantic love, even when it's clearly not working? Because romantic love offers us something irresistible. The illusion that we can escape the fundamental loneliness of human existence. When you're in the throes of romance, you feel completely seen, completely understood, completely connected to another being. But this feeling is based on projection, not reality. You feel understood because you're imagining that the other person shares your thoughts, your values, your dreams. You feel connected because you're both high on the same drug. When the drug wears off, the loneliness returns. And rather than learning to be comfortable with this essential human condition, we chase the next romantic high. Real love doesn't eliminate loneliness, it makes loneliness bearable by giving it meaning. When you truly love someone, you're willing to be lonely together. You're willing to sit with them in their separate experience, to honor their individuality, even when it means you can't completely merge with them. Romantic love promises union. Real love offers communion, two separate beings choosing to share the same space while remaining themselves. I want to tell you about Emma, a woman who came to me heartbroken after her third divorce. I keep choosing the wrong men, she said. They all start out perfect and then disappoint me. We talked for months about her pattern. Finally, I asked her, what if you stopped looking for someone who wouldn't disappoint you and started looking for someone whose disappointments you could live with? This question changed everything for Emma. Instead of seeking perfection, she began seeking compatibility. Instead of falling in love with potential, she started appreciating actuality. She's now been happily married for 12 years, not to a perfect man, but to a man whose imperfections complement her own. Here's what I've learned after decades of watching people navigate love. The couples who stay together aren't the ones who never disappoint each other. They're the ones who learn to disappoint each other gracefully. They understand that disappointment is not the enemy of love. Expectation is. When you expect someone to be your everything, they will always be your nothing. When you expect them to complete you, they will always leave you feeling empty. But when you expect them to be beautifully, imperfectly human, they might just surprise you with moments of transcendence. So what do you do with this knowledge? How do you love in a world where romantic love always ends in disappointment? First, you stop believing the fairy tale. You recognize that the person you're attracted to is not your soulmate, your missing piece, or your salvation. They're just another human being, as flawed and wonderful as you are. Second, you use romance for what it's actually good for. Getting close enough to someone to see if there's potential for real love underneath the projection. Third, you learn to love consciously instead of unconsciously. You choose to see your partner as they are, not as you wish they were. You appreciate them for their actual qualities, not their imagined perfections. And finally, you understand that the goal of love isn't to find someone who makes you happy. Happiness that depends on another person is not happiness, it's dependency. The goal of love is to find someone with whom you can be unhappy in a meaningful way. Someone whose struggles you're willing to share, whose growth you're willing to support, whose humanity you're willing to honor even when it disappoints you. This might sound unromantic, but it's actually far more romantic than romance itself. Because choosing to love someone despite their flaws, despite their humanity, despite the inevitable disappointments, that's the closest thing to magic this world has to offer. Romantic love is about finding the right person. Real love is about being the right person for whoever you're with. Romantic love asks, do you complete me? Real love asks, how can I serve your becoming? Romantic love ends in disappointment because it's based on illusion. Real love never ends because it's based on truth. The next time you feel that familiar flutter of romantic attraction, enjoy it. Let it carry you towards someone who might be worth knowing. But don't mistake the flutter for the destination. The flutter is just the invitation to the dance. The real question is, when the music stops and the lights come up, will you still want to be in the room with this person? If the answer is yes, not because they're perfect, but because they're perfectly themselves, then you might have found something worth keeping. Something that disappointment cannot destroy because it was built on the solid foundation of who you both actually are. That's not romantic love. That's something infinitely better. That's love. Period.